Hey, welcome back. With Bitcoin and gold both reaching new all-time highs, the hype for them is building up again. It's very easy to see, just look at how many videos and articles are popping out about them again and look at the views these channels are getting. I'm not calling anyone out or anything, I want this to be more of a light open discussion than my normal data heavy video. Why I made this video is because after people lose so much money basically gambling with crypto, they often quit investing altogether or they go down a very risky path trying to make the money back. You can do whatever you want with your money, I hope you are investing it to grow and live a better life with it, but keep in mind that people, especially in crypto, often have other incentives to promote it. The amount of money you can get for an affiliate in this industry is insane because the crypto platforms know that they can make a lot more money out of you. When it's not commission based, meaning the more you trade the more money I get, so I have an incentive in making you buy and sell as much as possible, you can literally make a salary in the US, so good money, out of like 10-15 people. Even I get this kind of offer and I refuse them, don't worry. The point is, do what you want with your money, but make sure you know what you invest in and don't do it just because someone told you to. I'm sure I'll miss some things and I don't want to pretend I know everything. When someone does that, it's a good indicator that they don't either. I'll use a bunch of recent or fundamental arguments pro and against Bitcoin and gold. For the record, I consider both bad investments for normal people, especially today, and you'll see why. Before we begin, no matter what you believe about either of them, the least I hope you'll remember is to always check the source and do your research well. With these two especially, there is so much interest in pumping the price from big institutions and whales that you really don't know what to trust anymore. To begin with Gold 2.0, so a store of value, this is just not what's happening. People don't buy Bitcoin as a store of value, come on. A majority of people buy it to get rich quick. Why do you think there are so many crypto scams out there? The whole mentality around it is getting rich overnight. There can be good applications especially for the technology behind crypto, but that's not the majority. The truth is, Bitcoin's image and performance, not necessarily Bitcoin itself, have been and are still used to scam people over and over, especially with other cryptocurrencies that promise a similar performance. If this aspect was gone, I think a lot more people would have trusted it. Ultimately, all currencies are based on trust, but trusting governments who, in a majority of cases, have public systems, weapons, provide healthcare and so on with your taxes to protect or somehow earn that trust is very different from crypto. There is the point about sustainability based on this popular report saying that almost 60% of the energy used by Bitcoin mining is sustainable, but again, look into the source. They aren't even hiding it, but a majority of people probably see the headline and that's it. If you look into the report, it's really trying to push this, let's say, greenwashing, but the data that they base the whole thing on is pretty much BS, and I'll show you why. First, we see the 59.5% global number being estimated based on their analysis, assumptions, and extrapolation. So, by default, you trust what they did in the study, which is a very generous term. Who are they? The Bitcoin Mining Council was founded in 2021 by people including Michael Saylor and Elon Musk and included about 45 crypto mining companies when they published this. I didn't know this when I recorded what I just said, and apparently they've been accused of greenwashing before. Plus, if you look at BMC members, which are according to them even greener, you see why the data is basically worthless. They provide the questions, and this 3-question survey is what's behind the data that you see in the headlines. So they basically ask the companies how green they are. Ask any company this and see how reliable that data is. Also, 8 sources on this much data says a lot if you work with this kind of thing. Plus 1, 3 and 4 are based on the exact same link from BP and they somehow managed to mess up this link here and also forgot a space here. But let's assume the data is correct and made by professionals. Talking about the reliability of the data, when they published it, this had 45 mining companies representing around half of the network. So we probably had some hundreds of smaller companies plus undisclosed illegal operations, but let's seriously ignore that side. If half of the members answered, it's irrelevant. There is a statistical rule of thumb that says the minimum sample size has to be 30. Below that, it's irrelevant and you don't even do the study. I don't know how many companies answered, it probably was over 30 because they want to push this thing, but even then, that's if you don't really care about precision, which they do because they present exact data in percentages. By default, you don't use this kind of question to begin with. For the reference, if you have 300 companies, if you want a normal 95% confidence with a 5% margin of error, you need like 170 companies to answer. So even if all 45 answered and they were completely honest, it's irrelevant for the other half. You can generalize this data. This is literally the same as a project made by university students in year 1 or 2. There was another one saying they got to 54.5% in 2024, but again, it's based on publicly available data. In how many cases out of the legal total do you think these companies publish data? Do you think the Chinese miners that fled to Kazakhstan, who is pretty much entirely coal-based, publish data about sustainability? It can happen, don't get me wrong, especially if the price supports it, but mining metals can also be kind of sustainable. What's the point? Iron miners, for example, are advancing in that, with one of the biggest planning to reach real zero emissions by 2030. Obviously, that's because they have investments in hydrogen used instead of coal to produce steel, ammonia used as green fuel for vessels, and so on. Nobody is doing it for free. Also, if you can mine Bitcoin or whatever at a good enough price and you have the money, you can do it, okay, not tomorrow at a big scale, but in a couple of months it's ready to go. I remember that was an important argument for many people that talked about Nvidia, since it would increase the demand thanks to more crypto mining. If you want to open a gold mine now, first of all, you need to find a metal. You can mine gold anywhere, because even if there was gold in the ground, it might not be profitable or enough to justify mining it. Plus, the time until you get the approvals and set everything up can be anything between like 5 to 10 years, meaning that you can suddenly increase the supply and mess up the price. Eventually, what we call cheap metals today will no longer be available, meaning you'll have to increase the price you ask for, or there is less supply, which can have a similar effect. Now, even if it was fully sustainable, Bitcoin mining has a huge energy consumption. I know crypto enthusiasts defend this and say it's an argument in any bear market or something, but I'm recording this at literal all-time highs because it really doesn't matter. More energy demand on the same supply means higher prices, plus wasting the electricity that could have been used for something else. You probably know that China banned crypto mining some years ago. What some people may not know is that they migrated to Kazakhstan. What it caused is exactly what you can expect. That led to an 8% increase in demand, power outages, and eventually helped cause a whole energy crisis. It ended with violent protests and 238 deaths. It's not entirely due to crypto, but such an increase in demand obviously has an effect. Especially with electricity, this can be a very dangerous domino effect. And I know people use the argument of how much this other industry is polluting or how much energy it consumes, but in most cases, we are talking about real uses. Bitcoin and crypto in general right now are not providing anything useful that we don't already have. There is no need to waste so much power, no matter where it comes from. Now, you can see on the screen the sources of demand for gold. What's different about it is that around half of the demand comes from investing and banks. This is pretty much the only commodity with such a mix. Not only that, but jewelry, representing another huge chunk of the demand, is also interesting because it doesn't really care that much about the price. If you have to use $100 worth of gold to make a ring and the price jumps to 200, it's not an issue if you increase the price of the ring. A majority of people don't buy jewelry because it's convenient and cheap. They know the price of gold is up, so the ring is worth more money. So having so much demand coming from something that's not necessarily rational sources allows gold to see hype, fear of missing out, and so on. I guarantee you that if gold somehow jumps to 5,000 today, people won't be like, oh, it's expensive, I'm not buying. Same as Bitcoin today actually. You see people say how good of an investment it is and how much potential it still has, and people believe it because the price is still there, so someone is buying. But gold has some real uses that can offer a safety net, which is a key thing that crypto is missing. Having the demand from jewelries and electronics, almost no matter the price, is essential for the supply and demand cycle. The argument of gold mining causing debts, directly and indirectly, is obviously true, but that doesn't justify crypto in any way. Sure, you can have an alternative investment to gold, but it doesn't have to be crypto. It can be, for example, platinum, or if you make it digital, use any metal contracts that are backed by the physical thing, divide them, and that's it. Financial engineering is the least of our worries. We can find a way to replace some demand for physical gold without using so much energy for Bitcoin. Why not account for the pollution and debts needed to mine and produce all the GPUs and semiconductors and energy used to mine Bitcoin? If your argument is that gold mining is bad because of what it does to people and the environment, then how do you plan to mine Bitcoin without the key materials? Don't get me wrong, both are terrible, but the argument is not good. For you to even see the value of your Bitcoin today, someone had to mine. Recycling is probably not enough to cover the future demand. I know about 10-20% of the supply of gold is provided by that. You think all countries and banks will voluntarily give away their reserves to use it to mine crypto? Something I haven't seen a good argument for is the whole decentralization aspect and who pays for cops, firefighters, water and power infrastructure, city development and so on. You don't want the government to control your taxes and stuff, but how do you fund them? I've seen decentralized autonomous organizations or pay-as-you-go as potential arguments, but you still need someone to manage or govern over this stuff. Or another argument, expecting people to voluntarily pay for it. I'm sorry, but that's not happening. We've seen what happens when you let private companies take over healthcare, and it's not something a lot of people would want to spread into every public sector. Do you really want to be in a scenario where you have to think twice if you want to call the firefighters because the bill might be higher than the value of the house because you don't have a firefighter insurance? If nothing mandates or subsidizes or enforces laws over these organizations, they'll do what they want. Even in the US, you have the government intervening in healthcare. It's not an entirely free market, and you still have insanely high prices for something free in other countries. Now, gold pays no dividend and there is no guaranteed return, let's say. You can stake your crypto, but you still have to pay fees and massive spreads in many cases, so it's only slightly better from this point of view. A reason why gold is bad for ordinary people is that when you buy or sell it, someone has to make a profit. I'm talking about physical because at this point, if it's digital, it's basically almost the same as a cryptocurrency following gold. So you buy it above market price and sell it below, especially if it's a small quantity or you buy some coins or jewelry and stuff. By default, that can mean you need to see a 10-15% increase just to break even. That, for normal years, depending on when you buy, can mean half a decade of nothing just for you to not lose money. Any US bond or just constantly buying the S&P is probably better. Sure, it's not a steady increase because it's a commodity, so keep that in mind. How I invest in gold, because I do, is through gold miners. Miners are different from the commodity itself because they are basically a way to get leverage on it as well as sometimes significant dividends. You have a business with cash flows and assets that you can value that usually acts in predictable ways to economic changes. I've made some 300% profits with gold miners before, and I think there is potential to see more given rate cuts and their effect on gold. I know some people may say, oh, only a 4x? Yeah, but if you bought Bitcoin in this year, you could have made this much. True, but I guarantee you that almost everyone who buys Bitcoin would have probably sold well before they had 300% on it. With stocks, depending on the data and the studies, the average holding time is something like 5-6 months or 1 to 3 years. So something that's almost literally proven to work if you hold it for decades is sold basically overnight when it comes to investing. What do you think happens with crypto? I doubt there is relevant data for that, but you know it's lower, come on. Now, El Salvador, this one is just sad. Instead of fixing the country's corruption and terrible living conditions, they just make it worse. They even had to scale it back in December to secure some IMF loan. Even now, more than 3 years later, people don't trust it and prefer the US dollar even if it's legal tender by law. Look at what Milei is doing in Argentina, who had massive hyperinflation, although I'd say better living conditions. They are actually doing some crypto stuff together, but you first fix the country's underlying issues and then do this kind of PR. It doesn't fix the real issues, and again, don't think they are doing it for free. At the very least, they are doing it to attract companies to open offices there and tourism and revitalize the economy, which so far hasn't been the case. It's not about them believing this is the future or something, it's just something to make money. But it's a bet with people's lives made by some rich guys who either don't care if it doesn't work or become even richer if it does. So classic politics. Say China is reintroducing the gold standard, and I think they actually had some plans in that regard and they were preparing. Do you think they wouldn't have all the gold that they could get first before announcing it? There are obvious benefits if you clearly influence the market and have a lot. And say we get some universal cryptocurrency. Why would any government, except for El Salvador now, be okay with Bitcoin? You know others have a ton of it, it's not even a secret, so who would be okay with having whales they can't control in the market? Not to mention that a country can easily hurt another country and there is potential for it to degenerate into much worse. Don't get me wrong, it's happening even now, but very importantly, companies and especially people can't literally print money. Now, CIT is allowing Bitcoin payments. This one is actually true, but again, research it, don't just read the headlines. If you look into it, they instantly sell the Bitcoin by default to avoid volatility. I see that in some cases they can opt to keep it in USDT or Bitcoin, but often and by default it's automatically converted to fiat. So it's not really different than you selling your Bitcoin to buy that product with euros. It only makes it easier or quicker for you to use it and maybe you avoid some fees. But then, do they apply their own exchange rate? I don't know. And that's the main issue for a business. You have payrolls, rent, banks, suppliers and so on that you must pay at the end of the month or whatever. You know, for people, you put 2% of your portfolio into that and forget about it, but a business doesn't work like that. Especially for a small business, you basically get forced to liquidate every month or whenever you have to make a payment. You can gamble the money because you can easily go insolvent in a couple of months. They also don't use gold as money for a similar reason. It's a commodity and it can always be volatile and unpredictable, especially in the short term. It's just against the whole idea of a business. If you want to make money and compound it, you need some reliability as a business, among other things, which neither crypto nor gold have. Especially for crypto, any whale can bankrupt you overnight. Everything you built in, let's say, a decade can be gone because they decide to do another pump and dump. And I'm sure some of you might say I'm against crypto because I'm a boomer and I don't get it, but again, depending on the study, the average crypto holder is significantly older than me in pretty much any study. Remember, for it to go to 100,000 or whatever, someone has to buy. Then, when you think about the average retail investor, knowing that they hold stocks for months, how do you think they would react to a 50-70% crash? The unfortunate truth is that people who fall for this often don't know that much economics. Why I say this is because we have very recent examples of what happens to a country when it loses the monetary policy. Look at Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Italy and especially Greece in the previous financial crisis. These countries had to refinance debt over and over to pay the previous debt because they lost the mechanism that allows them to control inflation, economic growth and unemployment. Sure, they are literally playing with people's lives because that's what higher unemployment or inflation mean, but crypto doesn't fix anything. Instead of having governments control it, you really want to have whales and corporations play with this? And if you want to regulate this, then you basically make a government, and what's the point? I'm not going into the whole people wanting change and other political narratives that ultimately use common frustrations, especially with the government, to gain votes. And I'm not saying that to insult you. It's okay not to know this stuff, the same way I don't know programming and many other things because I'm not interested in that. As always, what I cover in my videos shouldn't be enough for you to make any investment decision, so please do your own research before investing in anything. If you want to see more videos like this one, please leave a like and even a comment to help me out and make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.